Welcome to the Boxing Life podcast. Now, this episode is unbelievable. We've had a ton of guests on the show, as I'm sure you know, and there's never been a time that I can think of when, as soon as that guest has left the building, where me and Glenn's like, we need to get him back on as soon as we can. And Glenn's even saying, we need to get him on every month. This guy's amazing. We absolutely love the show, and we wanted to keep talking, but we couldn't because of time. And the reason why we love the show is because of the value that we got from it. I really believe that what I got from Andrew, who was the guest, will really help change my life for the better. It's going to make me more productive. It's going to help me reach my goals. It's going to help me in so many ways, and I'm sure it can help you too. So the guest on the show is Andrew Huberman, who is a professor of neuroscience and the lab director of Stanford School of Medicine. He works in the lab. He's doing research on brains and the human brain and how we can help it. And like I say, he gives so much help and advice on here that I know it's going to help me, and I know it's going to help you as well, which I'm sure you're going to love. And this is only the second time that I've met Andrew, and I feel like he's my mate, and I've built a relationship with him, and yeah, he's great, and I'm sure you're going to love this episode. Now, real quick, if you need an excuse to come to Los Angeles, an excuse to come to California, now you've got one. April 25th and 26th, Glenn Holmes and myself are teaching a Box and Burn Academy, our certification course, level 1 and level 2, which is going to be amazing at the Box and Burn gym. So you can check it out at boxandburnacademy.com, use code FB20 to get 20% off. Also, we're doing an event that we've never done before. It's a mentorship day where you're going to work alongside me and Glenn for the full day, talking business, online courses, branding, social media, building your brand, creating a podcast. So many good things happening there. And as well, a quick note, if you are level 2 Box and Burn certified, we are doing a level 3 course May 31st. That's just been announced. Anyway, here it is, the Boxing Life podcast with Glenn Holmes, Andrew Huberman, and myself. Enjoy. Andrew, what's happening, mate?
Great to be here.
Thank you for coming on the Boxing Life podcast. We met the first time last week, and we sat down I told you, Glenn, we sat down for 2 hours and we just spoke. And I can't remember the last time I spoke with someone for 2 hours and I was totally engaged in the conversation. Right now, I'll speak to someone for 2 minutes and I'm normally, get me the fuck out of here. You're the same.
Including me.
Yeah, especially
that when he speaks to me.
And I was just so interested in just doing everything you had to say, and a lot of it was because you were giving me value. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about. I've already done the intro, but what? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm 44 years old. I'm a professor of.
Very good looking, I would say, right?
If you think that, tell him.
Yeah, I do.
Kind of you. I'm 44. I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology, Stanford School of Medicine, and basically I've spent my entire professional life and school life training to be a neuroscientist and running a laboratory. Got into it seriously when I was 19, and so professionally, that's what I know. That's what I do.
Yeah, neuroscientist. So obviously you're very smart, because if you think of anyone who does something with the brain, you automatically think, wow, he knows his shit. And after speaking to you, I know that you really do. You work in a lab most of the time. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so I direct a laboratory. I've got PhD students and postdocs and technicians and whatnot. I do a little bit of teaching.
Right.
So I teach undergraduates about how the brain wires up and brain regeneration, and then I teach medical students neuroanatomy.
Right.
And I do a bunch of public education. But yeah, research and education about the brain and what it does, and that's what I'm about.
Yeah, the brain, and people who listen to this podcast regularly, they know that I'm very interested in the brain and the way it works, and a big thing for me is the damage that it's done, that boxing does for the brain, right? And one thing I was surprised with you was when you told me that you love boxing, and that's part of the reason why we connected, and as well that you sparred, you used to do sparring. do you not worry about the damage that it's done to your brain, or that it would do?
Yeah, so I do love boxing. I did some Thai boxing when I was younger, and then it's been about 5 or 7 years of where I was training hard and sparring about once a week.
Right.
I was in my 30s, and I took no head hits is better than taking head hits for sure. I'd never never been knocked down, never been knocked out. Probably suffered a few concussions here and there. It's a complicated trade-off. I've have talked about this, and you know this better than anyone, but I wasn't a professional fighter. I had no aspirations of being a professional fighter. For me, the training and the ability to calm myself under physical conditions of real danger were felt of value to me at the time, and I feel fine cognitively and mentally, but I won't lie, I think I probably did take some damage. I think it's you can't be a swimmer and not get wet, There's just no way. I'm definitely not the first person to say that, but there's just no way. And so one has to compare the benefits to the risks. And I do think there are tremendous benefits to martial arts and combat sports. But these days, because my lab works on brain regeneration and other things, I'm very interested in how, we can regenerate the brain, how we can keep it young and healthy. And but I'll say, some of the greatest moments of my life, some of the closest relationships were developed in a boxing gym. So it's complicated.
Yeah.
If you think, that's what I was going to say, like the benefits of boxing and training and even sparring, as long as it's controlled, the benefits far outweigh, in my opinion, the taking a few headshots. Because like you said, the regeneration of the brain, it's going to regenerate itself. It's not like you're going to be doing this for 70 years, your entire lifetime, getting punched several times a week. Like people, even professional fighters who are sparring and putting rounds and rounds of sparring in, by the time they're at late 30s, early 40s, they're done, right? So their brains, can they still regenerate at that age?
They definitely can regenerate. There's certain forms of damage, bleeds and things that are going to create permanent damage. And then there's a lot of capacity to regenerate the brain and to what we call neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change. And we could talk in depth about what that is and how to get that. I don't think that people should be taking head hits from any sport unless they really know what they're doing and they want to be there. And that's tough with kids, right? Because a lot of these sports kids start young and they don't really know what they're signing up for.
Right.
Here's the thing, if you had to pick, you would find a way that you could get the benefits of martial arts. And some of those that are, people kind of overlook this, but in boxing, right, there's an incredible ability that one learns how to focus, right? I mean, focusing for a 3-minute round is anything but trivial.
Yeah.
And being able to do that in a way where, you're in danger sometimes and you're learning to calm yourself and think clearly under those conditions. That's a powerful tool to export to other areas of life.
Right.
It can save your life outside of the gym, not even if there's no physical threat, right?
I'm seeing that on a daily basis with the training clients day in, day out, and start doing shoulder and body sparring with them. They're not taking head trauma, we're just doing shoulder and body sparring. But once you start introducing that into their training, people love it, and they realize I can see it in them, the amount they have to concentrate, how much like you were saying, the heart rate's up, they're in a stressful situation, but they've got to learn to breathe and stay calm and keep focused, apply skills. It's they take that into their jobs, whether they're producing a record or going and teaching a yoga class, whatever they're doing. That's the benefit they've took out of that discipline. They can put that into practice in their own careers. It's huge.
Yeah. And the other things that support boxing, like road work, doing a lot of cardiovascular work, the community around boxing, where I live up in the Bay Area, there's King's Gym, it's been there a long, long time. Famous for, people like Andre Ward and others coming through there. I know Mr. and Mrs. King well. I sponsor some kids that train there, and meaning I pay their gym fees so that they can do it. People don't realize, but for a lot of people, especially in the inner cities, the boxing gyms are community. The parents come in there and hang out while their kids train. They don't have access to the finances for a lot of equipment. And so boxing will always, I believe, have that role. It's also a great workout. I mean, there are ways to really enjoy boxing and most of what boxing has to offer without sparring and fighting. And I think that every person can really benefit from it. Like you said, like shoulder and body sparring. Now, you learn a lot about yourself in states of extreme stress, right? And there really is no simulation for that. One thing that I see a lot of these days is people getting excited about ice baths. And I know Wim Hof, done some work with Wim, and there are other people, of course, who are doing cold exposure. The ice bath is kind of interesting because it's a way in which you can confront real stress and an edge. Like nobody is immune from cold. Right. Nobody. You can get better at it. Yeah. But I see the ice bath as kind of an interesting way of making people confront stress. But let's face it, if you've boxed real rounds, which you both have, far more than I have, and far better, I'm certain too. I can't say I was very good. I wasn't bad, but I just think there's something in those moments of being tested where you find that. But yeah, have I seen flashes? Yes.
Yeah.
Have I been hurt? Yes.
Yeah.
Have I hurt the other guy? Yeah.
Right,
That too.
Disclaimer here: we haven't paid him to come on and promote boxing.
No.
Boxing.
Look, I should say so. On both sides of my dad is a scientist. My mother's father, my grandfather, was a nutritional biochemist. Right. He was at Cornell, back east, and he also boxed in the Army. I grew up in a family where science and discussions around boxing were prevalent. And I grew up watching, this was in the Tyson era, the Holyfield era. I still watch the fight game. One thing people I think don't know is if you go into a boxing gym, you're going to see some of the fittest and most clear-headed 70-year-olds that you've ever met, because their cardiovascular shape is amazing. So much of longevity is just keeping the blood flow to your brain healthy.
Yeah. On the other side, and you're saying he's promoted, I'm
not promoting. I'm just discussing my history.
Yeah,
with it, right.
But I'm going to go the other way as well. You might see some clear-headed, fit 70-year-olds, but then you're going to also see some 30-year-olds who can't put a sentence together properly because they're slurring the words because they've been punched in the face that many times. And what you've just said there, Glenn, about this, you said something like this weird more
the regeneration.
About there's more
the benefits,
more pros than cons about boxing. Where I think I might be on the fence with that. I might disagree with that, and that's the reason why I wouldn't put my kids into boxing, because even though I've made something of myself from boxing, and I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't boxing. I see so many people boxing who's come away with it with absolutely nothing, who's working in a building site now with a little bit of CTE, who's not earning any money, who's depressed, who's drinking every night, who's
talented
anxiety.
people as well, right? Who've been doing it since they were kids.
Exactly, and these kids, some of them boxed for England, being national champions, and now they're in a horrible situation in their life, and like it's not everyone. There is some 70-year-olds who's getting through it, but
sure.
But also the other end, there's these kids that are just not making it, and I think without blowing my own trumpet here, I'm like 0.1% of the people who've come away with who's done something. You've seen it, Glenn. Some of these boxers in the UK, you might have seen it. Like some boxers they've got nothing.
Yeah, you definitely see people staggering around, losing their way home from the gym. Kids where when I lived in San Diego, I was a professor in San Diego for a while, and then back up to Stanford. I'd go. The fight culture down there was really intense. You got a lot of military there, and I'm not a physician, I'm not an MD, but people knew I work in the vision science world, and occasionally someone would come up to me with eye damage and like, I can't see out of the periphery of my eye. What am I doing? These are young kids in their 20s. Wow. And they're never going to make a dime doing it. And so I think the key thing is, for me, what I took away from boxing was that any experience where you have to feel that intense push where it's hard, something's difficult, is going to grow you. And so the question is, what are some things that people can do, young kids can do, that can grow them in the same way as boxing, football, sports where you could take damage but not have to take that damage.
Right.
Reading books and getting serious in university. I guess you guys call it uni.
Yeah.
All right. was, look, it was every bit as hard as boxing. There, you know, I was an okay high school student, not terrific for reasons that are kind of complicated. And then when I decided to get serious at 19, it was like I had a lot of catching up to do. So I'm reading hard books, I'm doing math sets, I'm doing things that are really challenging. My brain hurt. I mean, it was really difficult. And so I used to literally, I'm not making this up, I used to lock myself to the chair so that I wouldn't even get up to use the bathroom. So I would just keep studying the whole way through. This is before phones, so there weren't those distractions.
Yeah.
And your mind hurts when you're learning.
Yeah.
But we now know that strain that you feel is actually the brain trying different combinations of solutions to things. That's your brain.
That's healthy.
That's healthy. That's plasticity.
Yeah, I didn't know
that's
that.
learning. And so you can get that without risking head damage. You can do it in ways that grow you. But it's challenging because it's hard to create a community around that in the same way as getting a bunch of guys together. I was a young, rowdy, you know, testosterone-filled kid.
That's a great point.
You know, I went to the gym to see my friends.
Right.
You know,
just on that brain hurting thing, because I experienced this quite a lot, like at night usually. So like kind of two halves to my day where it's like gym all morning, train people, train myself, whatever, and then afternoon we'll work on all this stuff that you see in front of you on this board where we've got all these different tasks to do, and we're thinking about marketing and copy and how we're going to promote this, how we're going to do that. A lot of creative stuff, right, and a lot of logistical stuff and setting deadlines and all that kind of stuff. By the time I get back to my house at like 7-8 p.m, I'm sore, like here, like I'm tight in here.
Yep.
My brain is like physically feeling it. So that's good to know, that, like that reassurance that's like a good thing for your brain, that you're feeling that tightness. Because I've always thought of it as like I'm doing too much, I'm exerting too much. Like my brain shouldn't be hurting, like, you know what I mean? And I'll try and like calm it down.
Those are the mental reps that count.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about brain plasticity and how to make your brain better. I mean, neuroscience has a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I'd love to get into. We're going to get into like supplementation.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I just want to see one more thing about on the boxing front. I didn't really want to come here and talk all about boxing, but when you talk about community, now that is the best thing for people. You know, when I started boxing when I was 10 years old, all of the kids there, just about all of the kids there, come from rough neighborhoods, rough backgrounds, and when we got together, we were like a family, like a community of brothers, you know. And even now, the kids who I grew up with when I was 10, 11, 12, all the way to 16, we all had some shit going on at home, right? But when you got to the gym, that was forgetting about you. Or we your boys, you were punching each other as hard as you could in the face, busting each other's noses. But then you create that bond. It was like your family away from your family, you know. And that there is so powerful, and that is probably for me one of the biggest benefits of going boxing for kids. So I just wanted to see that as well. I've just been talking shit about boxing a little bit, but I want to see that now.
Just to finish on that, on the boxing stuff, like what you said about people that are struggling now, and they're like talented careers and now struggling, and they've like had brain trauma or whatever it is. I feel like it's easy to point the blame on boxing, but I would point to them, because there are some people, like for example yourself, you've had that ability to think outside the box and think like, right, this isn't going to last forever. I'm going to need something after boxing, right? You got that kind of business mindset and like something, you put it to use. Not everybody has got that skill. So it's like a skill in itself that you kind of have to learn and develop. Like, okay, I'm going to stop boxing at some point. I've got to figure something out after this. And not everybody does that. That's where they kind of fall down. And I feel like boxing as a sport and as an organization and all that could do way more to kind of push fighters into thinking, look, right, you're not going to do this forever, but let's start trying to encourage them to open gyms and do
as well. What we spoke about the other day was like, what was hard for me is like boxers are used to these highs all the time. You go to fight, you win, you drop, you win, then you know, and you're at a high. It's the high. You're like, I'm guessing you're on heroin or you're on cocaine or whatever it is for that few hours after your fight. It's the best feeling in the world. Yeah. And then when you retire, it's like, now what? Yeah. So
everything seems boring.
I mean it is. So let me ask you, if you've got much experience with that with other athletes. It's not just boxing. I guess it's like soccer players, footballers, or basketballers when they have a game and it's like the best thing ever, and then they're like on a pedestal, the star, and then when they retire, I've heard that a lot of people go through depression because of that. Yeah,
absolutely. So perhaps a good way to discuss this in kind of the neuroscience terms is, look, so we have this chemical in our brain, dopamine, right? This is the feel-good chemical, and we all make it. Children make it, adults make it. Dopamine is released in the brain anytime you're chasing a goal or something outside of you, okay? Like in the world. It could be a fight you have coming up in a year. It could be you want to find a boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, depending on what your life goals are and who you are. You want to do well on a school exam. Dopamine is what's secreted in the brain when you win. It's associated with reward, when you reach that goal. And nature wired us this way. You know, Mother Nature created these very generic chemicals that could be released in our brain in response to food, sex, winning in battle. We know this is, you know, winning money, closing a good deal with a business partner, whatever it is. But Mother Nature is really clever because there would be no reason for us to ever move from our present conditions to some outside goal if we weren't motivated. And so what Mother Nature did was created this thing where dopamine is released in little bits as we chase a goal. And as we're thinking about that thing outside us, that finish line, that finish line, that finish line. Then when we get there, we get a big rush of dopamine. And the longer you've been pursuing that, and the more important it is to you, the bigger rush of dopamine, okay? You can bet that when your first child was born, you were flooded with this. Now, so that's great. It keeps us motivated, and it rewards us when we get there. But then we return to a baseline that doesn't feel as intense, as good. Now, nature created a second reward mechanism, which is a chemical in our brain called serotonin. And that's released when we're happy with things that are in the here and now, not when we're chasing a goal. So when you hold your baby for the first time, or in the morning when your kids run in and it's like, you know, daddy, daddy, you know, I guess they're British, so daddy, daddy, you know, and they run in, you just feel great.
Yeah.
You weren't thinking about anything about pursuing a goal. That's serotonin. That's feeling good in the here and now. And so what happens, to kind of circle back to these athletes, and it's not just athletes, it's people that are like all about medical school or all about science. I see this in the scientific community too, when it's all about something outside you, and then you get there and you've compromised relationships, you've compromised being a high integrity person, if people have done that, and you look around and there's no source of serotonin, no community, no one there to really be with you, then you feel depression.
Right.
And you think, okay, what's the next thing? I need more money. I need more, success in my academic career. I need more fights. And so when you see people that are really balanced, people that have healthy lives, what you see is people that have learned to control the dopamine system in themselves. Yeah. And they also understand that there's another source of reward, this serotonin kind of here and now thing. So they work on relationships. Yep. They're not, you get these people, let's just use the boxing gym as an example. You get people that come in and they are driven, and it's like they have a fight and everyone kind of, steps back. They know they're on a path, right? But if that person isn't also treating people decently, eventually, no matter how much money they make, and this is also true for people who want to be neurosurgeons, no matter how much money, how much fame, how much, success and degrees and credentials they get, or entrepreneurs, if you aren't building really solid relationships, those people inevitably are unhappy and miserable, because the dopamine, remember, it's all about things that are outside us. Yep. So, and Mother Nature designed us like this for tens of thousands of years ago when we were in caves. If we were just happy being in that cave, we would never leave the cave and go find new food, new mates, evolve societies, build boats, cross oceans. Dopamine is what evolved us forward as a species. Yeah. But serotonin, and there's some other chemicals too that are released in our brain, those are the glue, so that when you see somebody that you know well, your business partner, your friend, and it's just a quick hug or a handshake, you just look them in the eye, you feel something, you feel safe. And so we were wired for this. And so my advice to anyone, whether or not you're pursuing an academic career, sports career, business career, is know that you have these two reward systems, and make sure that you're taking care of them both.
It's really
because
interesting.
otherwise you will end up in either a cold, dark place.
Yeah.
This is kind of the Scrooge, thing, or people who are too focused on the here and now, they're not going to grow their life that much. So those are kind of the basics of reward in the brain. And again, there's some other molecules too that are important that we could discuss. But I think if people can understand that, like, work on that serotonin system, community and social connection, so powerful for the immune system, for brain health, for well-being, and and the dopamine thing. Be ambitious. I mentor some young guys up where I live, and I support these kids at the boxing gym. Be in pursuit of a goal, but also take care of the relationships in your life. One without the other you just won't make it.
So just on that point you mentioned about the ambition, right? It's so interesting that evolutionary reference that you gave. So interesting, because that's kind of what has got us here. It was to be ambitious and pursue that next thing. But now in the current time we're in, I feel like we're in an era of we've got anything we want on demand. We're told from so many different sources we can pursue any career we want. We can go and get anything we want. We've kind of got everything we want, right? So my question is, like, is it harder to be ambitious now, you think? Or is it I think it's easier to be ambitious, but I think that's at the detriment of a lot of people, because the more ambitious you are and the more you pursue it and push that, the harder it is to be good at the basics, like have good solid relationships, or just take care of the basic stuff, right? So I feel like the more we push the ambition and chase that dopamine, as you were saying, it's harder to balance the smaller things. You know what I mean? So that's kind of
you need both. You need both. So I would say that there's a lot more available for us to pursue now. The internet's an amazing thing, right? The social media is an amazing thing that we can know people from across the world, share information. What's challenging right now is focus. The ability to focus, because ultimately anyone can pursue a goal, whatever goal, but you need to also have time to build relationships and do those things. And some of my best relationships I developed while pursuing a goal. For scientists, I've had the benefit of amazing mentors and scientists all over the world, amazing colleagues, great relationships. So focus comes from a different molecule in the brain called acetylcholine. Think of it like a spotlight. So when it could be, if somebody's holding up mitts and then you say, okay, here's the combination, and it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, blah blah blah, or it could be, you're staring at a page of a book and you got to read that page and absorb the information. Acetylcholine acts as kind of a spotlight. It's a lot like a microphone, actually, that goes between the neurons that are active and makes that conversation in the brain louder than everything else.
And is that formed from choline itself? Or two separate things?
Yeah, it's a derivative of the precursor choline.
Okay, yeah.
Most of the time, though, our attention is kind of diffuse. It's kind of everywhere. It's like a light that you shine really broadly, and it's kind of dim light everywhere, or bright light focused real close.
Yeah.
When we are pursuing a goal, we have to, and we want to accomplish it, we have to be focused. And so by definition, by focusing on that, you're not focusing on other things. So I think one of the great things that in life is the ability to focus and pursue a goal. I think every kid should learn how to do that. It's so key. In fact, we are rewarded in life, at least monetarily and from a kind of academic and a business perspective, in direct proportion to how focused we can be. So when you hear stories of, people who are immensely focused on what they can achieve, that's because they're very good at putting the blinders on to everything else. They're not paying attention to all the other things that are going on.
Yep.
So nowadays, and there's power in that, provided that they can turn that off and switch to, also forming healthy relationships. When you hear about whether or not it's entrepreneurs or tech people or actors or athletes, where their lives are just crashing, I'm never surprised, because their lives, they've been rewarded for being super narrow focused, right?
Yeah.
They weren't raised and they weren't in a mode of being balanced, right?
I just think that the skill set too, right? They're so
Absolutely.
so abnormally talented at one thing. that they've spent all their life just going.
Sure.
And they've built that talent level to such an extreme that's abnormal to anybody else, right? That like something as basic as holding down a relationship or going and getting groceries or whatever it is, paying bills or something like that. It's like they don't have a clue how to do that stuff. Paying taxes, like
yeah,
it's
and a lot of times they don't have to because other people have been doing it for them.
But the minute that kind of stops or fades off, or they do have to focus on that stuff, it's like you said, it's just a car crash. You know, it's like flawed genius kind of.
So a couple things, you know, one is that at least in America and probably elsewhere, we sell that dream. The dream is, you know, having the cars and the house and, you know, you've got all this opportunity and other people are going to handle all your stuff, you know, doing laundry, you know, and all this stuff that, you know, that's real life, you know, and couple things about attention and focus. So there's a computer science professor at Georgetown. His name is Cal Newport. And so I'm borrowing from some things he said. So credit to him. He wrote this book called Deep Work, where he really says, you know, we're rewarded mostly in proportion to how much we focused on one thing. And nowadays, because of everything being available on our phone at every moment, you know, Netflix and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all of it, right? New York Times, everything, all at once, anytime. We have given ourselves a little bit of an ADD. We tend to be a spotlight that kind of moves around like this. And I actually think that we're at a very interesting point in evolution. People forget that we're still evolving as a species. Yeah. Right? We're being tested now for our ability to evolve. And I think the key differentiator in kids and in adults is going to be who can stay focused amidst all this opportunity. You know, if you look at food and nutrition in the 40s and 50s in this country and probably in England as well, most meals were home cooked and that kind of thing. Yeah. People didn't go to restaurants unless they were very wealthy. Now, you know, but in the 80s and 90s, restaurants boomed. People started eating everywhere. It's like a giant buffet. Now we have the greatest obesity crisis ever in this country and abroad. And what we're also facing is basically it's like a buffet of information. Yeah. So every morning when I wake up, and I struggle with this too, you know, I've got the phone there. I'm working on a book and it's like, there's the phone and I could watch a Netflix special or answer Instagram and time just goes by so fast. It's like being at the buffet and it's like donuts and prime rib and turkey and our circuits, our brain circuits were designed to just start grabbing these things up and getting little bit. You can get your dopamine from anything. Yeah. So it takes a lot of discipline. We're now selecting for discipline. Yeah. And I even see it with students. I see it in myself. You know, I'm human. And so like for me, if I need to write or I need to read or I need to learn something, I lock my phone in a safe. Exactly. Because so it's addicting, right? Yeah.
Like, so we've had iPhone now for 10 years plus, right? Around 10 years it's been out. And for the majority of that 10 years, it was the rise of the notification and the multitasking. And we were like, this is fucking great, right? I can go on here and get that done. I can go on here and get that done. I can fucking pay this, do that, do this, play a game. And we were like, this is amazing, this is amazing. And then in terms of the evolution, like what you're saying, now we're in, and I read a blog on this on Medium just a couple of months ago, we're in the age of the anti-notification now, where we're realizing that's not the best for our productivity. All notification, multitask. We're like realizing we're suffering because of that, even though it started to be great. Now we're starting to evolve into like, let's turn notifications off. Let's start focusing. Let's use this technology to make us more productive. And that makes me feel confident because people are always down in iPhones and iPads and keep kids off this, keep kids off that, where it's too much. And I'm like, no, we're coming into that point now where we're starting to realize we're evolving over the last 10 years of learning. Like, we got to start focusing a little bit, and now we're using it to kind of channel our energies into a better focus, I think.
Absolutely. I'll give you a tool. I'll give your listeners a tool. So for every moment that you can resist, like even if you just say, like you reflexively pick up your phone, if you can flip it over and set it down, there's going to be a discomfort there. Yeah. This is the dopamine system waiting. It's anticipating. I want to look at my text messages. I want to look at that. Yeah. Now, I think the phone is a great tool because it allows people to communicate. But learning to control this dopamine system and your attention system, that spotlight of attention, is among the most powerful things that you can do. Yeah. And you don't have to go in and box rounds and get hit in the head in order to learn how to do that. You don't have to become a neuroscientist to do that. What it involves is committing to a goal, like I'm going to read one page of this book or I'm going to jog 1 block around 1 block.
Almost like create systems for yourself.
Create
right?
systems. But here's the thing. So this is where dopamine is powerful. You can make it work for you. We're not just slaves to this. The amazing thing about the dopamine system is humans, we have this big forebrain in the front that allows us to place meaning on things. So you can grow the feeling of reward, the sense of reward that comes from any behavior. Any behavior. So if you say, for instance, let's say somebody wants to exercise more. They put their shoes near the door. We've all heard of this. First, I put my shoes near the door. Then I walked around the block. Then, then I ran a marathon, But the key is to not just make it incremental, not just keep making small, little step. But when you reach one of those goals that you've set for yourself, you reward yourself mentally. This is key. And here is why. I'm adding a lot of molecules. There's a system in your brain that involves adrenaline, because adrenaline's in the body, released by the adrenal glands, but also in the brain. And when adrenaline gets too high, that's what forces us to quit. There's literally a brain circuit, we say, for quitting. This is data that were published this last year. Dopamine allows us to push back on adrenaline and keep going. I know you've felt this in boxing where you're just like, it's going badly and things aren't working. But if someone can crack a joke, or you can just laugh at it, or you remember something that gives you a sense of power, like maybe the meaning in being there, whatever it is, people work this out differently. All of a sudden you're recovered something. But think about it, you haven't recovered anything. Chemically, something had to change. Yeah. So if you can place your shoes near the door, or let's say I say I'm gonna not look at my phone for 10 minutes the first thing in the morning. That's hard actually, right? For a lot of people. But if you can get to 10 minutes, don't just get to 10 minutes, pick up your phone and go, okay, now I'm back on it. Think, I actually am more powerful than anything external to me because I'm controlling the schedule. And what you'll notice is you feel a lift. You actually feel as if you're in control of your environment. This is what happens when you're winning a fight too. When you sit down at the end of a round and you're like, I'm winning this thing. You gain energy, okay? And so this system of adrenaline and dopamine are always in play like this. And so you can decide, I'm going to read 1 page of a book, and when I get there, I'm going to reward myself mentally like, I did it. I'm mentally strong. And what you'll notice is you can now read another page. Right. And another page. So the key is to self-reward with dopamine, not just make dopamine dependent on outside things and events. The more we let the world dictate whether or not we get reward or not, the more miserable we're going to be. The more we can control this system, not only will you be happier, but you're also in charge of the most powerful neurochemical in existence. It's remarkable.
So with the rewarding, you just mentally rewarding yourself.
That's right. So what I recommend doing is, and people, you can also get this through gratitude. We used to think of gratitude as this kind of new agey, fuzzy thing, oh, I'm just going to be really happy with everything that's here and now. But here's what's interesting.
Did you just post something about this?
Yeah, yesterday? So I do some teaching on Instagram. We can maybe provide a link for people. I just sort of share neuroscience information.
I saw that yesterday. It was really good.
So gratitude is this very interesting thing of deliberately focusing on the things we've got. Let's just think about how amazing it is that we can do it right now. Like how amazing it is that we're all in the same room here. We're healthy. Yeah. We have food in abundance and fresh, clean air in abundance. If you really just concentrate on those feelings, even though that might kind of seem silly, what you'll notice is you get a bit of a lift. The same kind of lift you get from holding your child or from reaching a reward, a goal.
It's a serotonin release.
So this is going to be dopamine release.
Oh, really?
Maybe some serotonin too. But most people are afraid, tough guys and women are afraid of gratitude because they think it's going to make you soft. Yeah. It's going to make you just so happy with what's here that you won't need anything else. But that's not the way it works. It has this amazing effect of then making the outside world seem more willing to let you move through and reach your goals. And that's because it gives you this lift that makes you feel more capable. Yeah. So when I see, for instance, and I endorsed his book because I really love his work, like David Goggins, for instance, right? Like when I see what he did for himself, pushing himself, or I look at anyone who's really driven, there are other examples too, right? What I see is somebody who is not just good at pursuing a goal, but they must have some internal mechanism that when they reach little, milestones en route as they go along toward that goal, they gain energy. You see this in the fight game more than anywhere else because it's physical. We can actually witness it.
Yeah.
When you're winning, you gain energy. And these are actually hardwired circuits in the brain. Think about 10,000 years ago, we were foraging for water. Right. And let's say we found a little stream, just the tiniest trickle. We're onto it. That gave us energy to keep going.
Yeah.
And so these are ancient, powerful mechanisms.
In the fight game, you see it all the time. Like someone's out on their feet and then they just like land a counter punch or whatever, and then
something changed.
10 seconds ago, you were like, he's gone.
That's right.
And then 20 seconds later, he's flying.
What I'm seeing from that when you're talking about the fight game, it's just reminding me of the Olympics. So when I was 16, I got put in an 8-year training program for the Olympics, and if it was just like that was the one goal, and it was 8 years to get there, it would be kind of impossible. But along the way, you had national championships, you had multi-nations, European championships, world championships. So you had all them smaller goals, if you like.
Yep.
Which kept you going. That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, because you said there's a lot of distraction, in academics, so I'm in the world of academics, so medical school students take exams and graduate students take exams. So they've got this incremental thing, bringing them to a degree goal and all the time. But for people who are out of school, what we need is to be able to self-impose these schedules. And what I'm saying is that you actually have a lot more control over your neurochemistry than you might believe. And by learning to control that neurochemistry with your thoughts and your behaviors, right? You got to still do stuff. You got to read that book. You got to go and you got to take that jog. You got to go and find community. By doing that, you create a neurochemical system that gives you more energy.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I really want to point out is that the myth, the fantasy is that one can do that without any feeling of agitation or anxiety. Here's the thing. Anxiety and agitation are Mother Nature's way of getting us to move from the position we're in to another position. We think of stress as this terrible pathologic thing, and if it goes on too long, it's not good. But when you're pursuing a goal, the reason your heart rate goes up and you might even start trembling a little bit is it's trying to put your body into action. It's trying to move you forward. And so what in my lab studies things like fear and anxiety and stress, and we work with people with generalized anxiety and that kind of thing. And what you find is if people who are feeling stressed can take a step forward towards something to go into action, then they feel better, because that's actually what it was designed to do. Now, it gets tricky when people start feeling stressed and they're just kind of paralyzed, or they, but it's going to be a little messy sometimes, right? Public speaking for a lot of people, challenging to learn, making themselves vulnerable, reaching out and making relationships and doing that. But everyone experiences that stress. Yeah. And again, this agitation and stress were designed, it's adrenaline. It was designed to get us to move, to do something. And so this is where I think, like, whether or not someone decides to do martial arts, or whether or not they decide to do some other sport, or it's not a sport at all, learning how to move yourself forward, even tiny bits, and self-reward that process is super powerful. And then for the parents out there, there's an interesting one too. There's a famous study that was done at Stanford, by my lab, where they looked at kids that like to draw. So that during the like recess period, the kids would draw, and they took the kids that always picked drawing and painting, and for a couple of weeks they started giving them a gold star when they would do it, and then just a gold star on the page. Then a couple of weeks later, they took away the gold stars. They just stopped giving them, and the kids that liked doing that, they liked painting, they stopped painting. They didn't paint as much because they thought it was they now thought that it was the gold star that gave them the lift.
Right.
So we have to, now you say, well, what do? We have to reward people when they do well. Yeah. But the rewards we give ourselves are so much more powerful. And as you know, it can be the difference between winning and losing. Yeah. It really can. Yeah. If the more praise and stuff that we get from other people, that's great. That's powerful too. It helps us. Yeah. But if that's the only way we can feel good, I promise that trouble is coming for that person.
Big time, yeah.
Right?
I've got so much I want to ask you and talk about, but we've got time on what to do with this show. When we'll
have to do episode.
Yeah, 2. We'll definitely will when the book's coming out. We spoke about dopamine and serotonin. Is there a way, I mean, you've touched on it a little bit, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to get a dopamine kick off learning, off reading, finishing a book where I was like, I've just won a fight, it's the best feeling ever. Yep. Where if you could get that from self-educating or educating or give it to kids, when the kids...
Do you not feel like you do?
No, I mean,
when I learn something, or like I acquire a piece of knowledge or something that I can apply and that's going to help me.
Yeah.
But I get a massive feeling.
No,
like that.
I do. Like when
if I'm just listening to a podcast or something, I'm like, that's fucking gold. That I'm on a high for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
10
No, when I left
after.
the conversation with Andrew the other day, I was like, I felt really good, but it wasn't like a big massive high. It was like, I think serotonin more like.
Yeah, like we created a bond around some topics for sure.
And
there's anytime there's anticipation of like, oh, we're going to do a podcast, or we're going to, or we're going to train together, or we're going to learn, there's going to be some dopamine release. So you've experienced the extreme dopamine release associated with championship.
Right.
With championship, like for me, I've never experienced that, but I've, there are only 2 journals in my field, Science and Nature, that are like the top only, and the first time I got a paper in Science, it was huge. It flooded my body with that sensation. Now my dad's a scientist, and he warned me. He said enjoy it, but just realize there's a downslope to that too. I think once you just understand that there's a downslope, they even see this in mothers that give birth. It's called postpartum depression, because you're building up for 9 months. You have this kid, and then the anticipation is over. Now you got to raise this kid, right? Yeah. And the milestones come through their walking and their healthy feeding, and you're sleep deprived and all this. I think that there is a way to. You asked, wouldn't it be great? The key is the self-reward.
Yes.
Look, if tomorrow you can read a page in a book, or 2 pages in a book, and get some sunlight in your eyes, we can talk about why that's a good practice to do. Yep. Before you look at your phone, you can think to yourself, you can just take a moment, 30 seconds, and just think, how powerful am I to be able to push aside all these other distractions? And even though it's a small win, those small wins day in and day out mean that in 2 years, 3 years, you've read a bunch of books. You're that much smarter. Your brain is that much more solid and healthy. You're creating ideas, and it's not just the ideas that you're conscious of. When we read or we have even conversations like this, our subconscious will process it in our sleep. These kinds of things. There are things that we can all do and should do for our brain health.
Yeah.
And I'm big on this now, because I feel like for years now we've been hearing, oh, look, if you want to be fit, you want to have relatively low body fat, healthy cardiovascular, great skeleton, all that, strong and flexible. You got to train for it. You got to do something. You can't just sit there. But we also are now coming to the realization that if you want to be mostly happy person, it's good to have some lows as long as you can bounce back from them. But if you want to be a, person with a good mood, good disposition, able to think quickly, make good rational decisions, you got to work for it.
Yeah.
There's no free lunch.
Yeah.
You got to work for it.
Big time.
So we could talk about the practices that one does, but I do think you can grow this ability to release dopamine in your mind. Look, I always kind of revert to David, because he's people know who he is, but any person who's really driven, who is continually like on the ladder. I always just think when I'm doing something hard, it's like climbing a ladder. You're on the ladder. And if you can start to reward the effort process and think, man, this is tough, and this is exactly where I need to be,
right? Because
it's bettering me, you will fundamentally change as a human being.
It's just changing your mindset, really.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about obviously we've spoken about a bit about the damage that boxes done to your brain, but like recovery stuff, you're talking about sleep, and you've told me about L-theanine, what I've started taking. Glenn told me about that about 6 months ago, but because Glenn is not because you're not a neuroscientist of Stanford, I'm not listening to a fucking word you're saying.
I've just got
this guy tells
skinny
me
tattooed legs from Blackburn. He ain't listening
next
to me.
year I get the shit, and now I'm yeah. So let's talk about L-theanine. Let's talk about other supplements that you've recommended and the benefits of that.
Yeah. So happy to talk about supplements. I want to briefly, if I may, I just want to mention a few what I call just sort of foundational behaviors that everybody should be doing for brain and body health. And this is based on, I'm not talking 5 studies or 10 studies, I'm talking about hundreds of studies in humans and in animals. So most important, I would say, for everybody is to get light in your eyes after waking up. Now, some people wake up before the sun comes up. Some people are in very dark regions, Northern Europe and, winter and this. We could talk about how to deal with
natural light.
Natural light. Try and get some sunlight early in the day. You've got a window of opportunity of about an hour or 2 hours after you wake up to get some light into your eyes. Don't stare directly at the sun and burn your eyes out. That's not, we don't know how to regenerate your retina yet. So don't do that. But you know what I'm saying. Just get some sunlight, take your sunglasses off, get outside if you can, or otherwise do it through a window. and get 2 to 10 minutes, even if you're reading, even if you're talking to someone else, or even if you have to check your phone, do that and get some sunlight in your eyes. Why? It creates a pulse of adrenaline and some other things, a healthy dose of adrenaline and other things in your system that set your mind up for being wakeful and in able to sustain attention to mental and physical tasks through the day. It's also setting the time in which you're going to go to sleep that night.
So is that from the vitamin D release?
It is not from vitamin D. It's because, so you've got some neurons in your eye. They have a name called melanopsin cells, but that doesn't matter. They connect to your hypothalamus right above the roof of your mouth. And the right above the roof of your mouth is a clock. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Name doesn't matter, but it's a clock that releases a chemical into your body that tells every cell in your body it's time to be awake now.
Right.
And it starts a timer that starts running down so that in the late evening and night, you're going to drift off into sleep easily.
Right. So
now, a lot of people, they can't sleep and they don't know why. It's because they're keeping it too dark during the day. And they got too much light at night. So the first thing is get that light pulse.
So that's just purely just for setting that circadian rhythm,
that's right.
So that's completely independent of vitamin D production.
Yeah, vitamin D is a slightly separate mechanism. Then during the day, it doesn't really matter, to be honest, because you're in what's called the circadian dead zone. This system shuts down and it's not going to make a difference. Then around evening, when the sun normally would go down, even though there's very little light, try and get a little bit of light in your eyes in the evening before the sun goes down. Just a touch, 2 minutes. You're good. That actually will protect your system against light in the middle of the night, which we'll talk about next. Now, a couple little points, because people always ask about this. How long? 2 to 10 minutes. Can I wear sunglasses? I already said it before, but people always ask again. Try and take sunglasses off. Unless you have a retinal degenerative condition, you'll be fine. Never compromise safety, but you'll be fine. Just get some light in your eyes. Can you use artificial light? Sure. Bright LED lights will work, but sunlight is better. But if you're in Northern Europe, you're not going to get much of that. But on an overcast day where you can't see the sun coming through, there's actually a lot of photons, a lot of light energy coming through. This will set your testosterone rhythms in men, estrogen rhythms in women. It will keep your mood elevated. A lot of people have depression because they're not doing these basic, simple behaviors, okay? Then
will this work instantly? Is it
you'll notice.
Dear one.
You'll notice, and then and really, it's what you do consistently, like exercise. You just feel better.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Just an example of that. The weekend, I have my little 4-year-old with me, and it's like kind of my rest day, or whatever. I can sleep in longer. I don't have to be at the gym. So I slept with him until like 9 a.m. and then usually I'm like right on that stuff with the sunlight and everything, and kind of stuck in the house for an hour or two, and then I came to the gym to meet you at like 11. So we've been in the house for a couple of hours, and I realized that I was in the kitchen making coffee and stuff. I was like, I'm kind of feeling tired. I'm like, what's wrong with me? And I just went and stood on my patio for like 5 minutes, and I just like got the sunlight. Came back in. I was like just instantly. It's 5 minutes.
It's a game changer. And metabolism, hormone rhythms, even people who can't. There's a phenomenon called ER psychosis, where people are in the emergency room for other things, and they go psychotic because of the rhythms are all completely off of the lights. Amazing. So, and then the other thing is try and avoid bright light between midnight and 4 a.m. Now, look, you don't have to do these things every day. If you miss a day, you're not gonna dissolve into a puddle of tears. But if you get bright light in your eyes in the middle of the night, this system starts getting shifted. So try and stay off your phone in the middle of the night. Now, some people work nights for safety reasons, like don't compromise safety or your work, but try and stay off it. Here's why. There's a discovery this last year from a good friend of mine, Semra Hattar at National Institutes of Health, showing that if you get bright light in your eyes in the middle of the night, it turns on a depression circuit.
Wow.
So just like you have dopamine for reward, there's a circuit in your brain for disappointment and depression, because Mother Nature wants to tell you, don't do this behavior, do this other behavior. And there's a huge incentive for having a species that are all mostly awake at the same time and interacting with each other, most asleep at the same time. So get light in your eyes early in the day, ideally a little bit in the evening, and then try and stay off your phone and bright lights in the evening. If you have to, of course, if you're going to watch a screen, dim the screen. Or if you're going to have lights in your home, glasses, you could use blue blockers if you want, or just turn down the lights a little bit, keep them low, and keep them low in the room. Overhead lights are the worst, because the cells in the eye that view these things, they look up because they want to see the sun. So lights that are low in the room, if you've ever been to Scandinavia, they keep these low lights in the room, in the evening. It's great. You sleep. These are powerful things for controlling these chemical systems.
Yeah.
So that, and then the other ones would be, and your listeners are probably already doing this, but regular movement, move, right? Try and move. Social connection. So we hear a lot about oxytocin, this feel-good molecule when you hold a baby or you see your mate or whatever. Well, I guess mate means something different in Britain. When you see your partner or your mates or anyway, you know what I mean. When you see people that you love and you care about, you get this release of this chemical called oxytocin. It's another feel-good chemical. But there's a really interesting finding from a group at Caltech that shows, just over the hill there in Pasadena, that shows that when you are in regular social connection, face-to-face connection, texting won't do this, you suppress a molecule, it's called tachykinin, that creates stress and anxiety and fear and injures the immune system. And so you have to think about, the reason I keep going back to Mother Nature and evolution is there are certain behaviors that we're rewarded for and make us feel safe and good and capable of pursuing goals and feeling healthy and being healthy. And then there are certain behaviors that do the opposite. And we'll talk about supplementation next, but a lot of times people are looking for that external thing first, and they're not doing these what I call foundational behaviors. And then you could take all the supplements in the world that you want, and it's not going to create the effect you want. And the things I'm talking about also are cost-free. What they require is a little bit of discipline. But now's the opportunity. You can just weave back in that dopamine. Every time you go out and get that sunlight, also reward yourself. Be like, I'm actually doing something to make myself better. Yeah. So in any event, I want to make sure that I got those out.
They're great. They're like the foundations, right? We should all be doing.
Yeah, and even here in Los Angeles, you see people in the morning, dark sunglasses, in their car, on their phone, in the cafe. It's like they're living like cave bats.
Yeah.
So I've got one tip for everyone, even you might already do this, about your phone, not on your phone at night, is leave it downstairs on charge. Like I charge mine up downstairs now, so I can't go to it. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll not check the time for it. I've got all my notifications off on my phone as well, which is great. You know what I see sometimes on Facebook or Twitter or wherever someone will post, I can't sleep. It's like, what the fuck are you posting that for? Obviously, because you're on your phone. That's why. Anyway, so leave your phone downstairs. Get all your notifications off. That is huge for me, and it's huge for productivity.
A huge thing as well is like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signals as well. So now I'm using a smart plug.
Oh yeah, people are. I don't know much about this EMF and 5G thing. It's controversial. There's some articles about this. I haven't seen the data yet. I for your hard driving, super ambitious folks out there, right? Because I have a feeling people who kind of follow you probably have really going for it. I promise you, the people who are going to succeed to the greatest degree in life, relationships, career, all that, are going to be the people that can control their relationship to these devices. I'm not saying get rid of the devices,
100%,
but can control them. Just like the people that can go to the buffet and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to eat this stuff and feel good, maybe a little extra. You look at them in 10 years, they're going to look one way. And you look at people who are just like cramming all this in their mouth, and you're going to see diabetes and obesity. It's another way in which nature is asking us to control our behavior.
It's interesting you went there, because a minute ago when we were talking about addiction to phones, I was going to say, it came across my mind, I was like, if only we'd have learned as a species to do this with food. Because we're still, by the millions trying to figure that out,
L-theanine, can we talk about that?
Yeah, so let's talk about supplements. Here's the thing. I want to be real clear, just because it's important that I say this. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't prescribe anything. I'm a professor. I profess lots of things. So what I'm going to say is what I do. I really can't make recommendations, and everything people should run by their doctor. Just this is the reality, There's not one size fits all. So here's the thing. Sleep is whether or not it's for learning or for brain health or immune health or endocrine health, sleep is the biggie, right? Consistently getting good quality sleep is probably the number one thing that you can do. So a lot of people have trouble sleeping. So what do? Well, there are a couple behaviors that I mentioned, getting light in the morning, etc. But there are things that can help people get to sleep. And I've recommended these to friends. This is what I do. So trouble falling asleep. Some people take melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone whose job is to suppress puberty during development. That's why I don't take melatonin. So I don't recommend melatonin. Melatonin promotes the transition to sleep, but it doesn't actually keep you asleep. Okay? So a lot of people who have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep find that if they take magnesium, they supplement with magnesium, they have an easier time falling asleep.
I have a quick question on melatonin real quick, just while you're on it. Does supplementing with melatonin affect your natural production of it?
Most likely, yes.
Yeah, because that's why I stopped it. I used to do it a little bit, and then I started microdosing with it instead, because I was reading a few things that regular supplementation can suppress your
I'm not a fan
production.
of melatonin because it suppresses puberty.
Right.
And in adults, it does similar things.
But so now I also heard that it's only effective. It's super effective when traveling through time zones. So that's the only time that I'll take it now. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
true
mean,
and valid that is, but I've had pretty good results.
You can recover from taking melatonin, but it's not what I do.
Yeah.
So supplementing magnesium is helpful. So the form of magnesium is important.
Mm-hmm.
So things like magnesium citrate
Yep.
are going to be great laxatives, but they're not going to be great sleep aids.
Right.
Okay. Things like magnesium malate, MALATE, are going to be great for recovering from intense exercise and muscle soreness, but they're not going to be great for sleeping. Magnesium threonate, THREONATE, is a good way for me, and a lot of people find, to transition into sleep more easily. It tends to be a little bit of a sedative. And there's also some evidence that it's neuroprotective, which is great, right? Everyone wants to keep their neurons healthy.
Yep.
Theanine, which is THEANINE, works through a slightly different pathway called the GABA pathway. And a lot of people find, and I certainly find, that 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams of theanine about 30 minutes before sleep can help them with the transition to sleep. Yeah. Theanine, you now find it's being used in a lot of like sports drinks and stuff because it kind of offsets the jitters from caffeine. So now people are taking it during the day too. Yeah. People with anxiety sometimes find that taking a very low dose of theanine throughout the day, or even magnesium threonate, can help calm them out a little bit. If I take it during the day, I fall asleep, and so that's why I don't do that. For men, there's a supplement called apigenin, APIGENIN, which is essentially a derivative that's found in things like chamomile tea. Mm-hmm. It's also very good at promoting the transition of sleep. So I take 50 milligrams of apigenin, 200 milligrams of theanine, and 300 to 600 milligrams of magnesium threonate 30 minutes before sleep, and I sleep like I got clubbed over the head by a gorilla, minus the head damage.
If you don't take them, can you still sleep?
And if I don't take them, I can still sleep. I just sleep deeper.
Right.
Now, people should know that if you have theanine can cause these kind of intense dreams. But I've recommended these to a few folks. One would be Nick Hardwick, former NFL player, who told me, and I feel fine, sharing what he said, that, because he's tracking his sleep really carefully, that it greatly extended the amount of deep sleep that he was getting. Right. So when you wake up after a night of deep sleep, you know it. You feel amazing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. Neuroplasticity, the ability to learn, is triggered and created by intense focus during the learning, during this physical skill training, hitting mitts, while reading that book. That strain that you felt in your brain, those high attentional states, that sets the process in motion. But the rewiring of the brain, the healthy rewiring, occurs during sleep. The repair of the brain happens during sleep. So there's this washing out by cerebrospinal fluid that occurs in deep sleep. So the great thing is sleep is reparative, restorative. It helps us learn, helps us recover from any injuries we might have had to our brain and to the rest of our body. But now what's happened is people are talking so much about how important sleep is, and now people have sleep-related anxiety. So what I've tried to provide here are some tools: morning light, evening light, staying off bright light and avoiding bright light in the evening, theanine, apigenin, and magnesium threonate. I do want to mention apigenin should not be taken by women because it's a pretty potent estrogen inhibitor. So for men, that's in most cases a good thing. Mm-hmm. And for women, you wouldn't want to do that. But again, anyone, if they're thinking about taking these things, should talk to their doctor. They're all legal and available. I have no stake in any of them, right? Just to be clear. Yeah. I just have found tremendous value for me, just given my schedule and the importance of sleep.
Yeah, no, I think it sounds great, and I like what you're saying about the importance of sleep because it helps rewire your brain. Is that what you said?
Rewire your brain when you went to learn, to learn new things, to restore and repair the brain. There's evidence that deep sleep washes out some of the stuff that can lead to things like Alzheimer's and dementia.
The plaques,
the plaques. And so people, it's not that we need to be sleeping 12, 13, 14 hours a day, although teenagers should probably be sleeping a lot, but we need that deep sleep. So anything you can do to maximize deep sleep. Can I give one more tool?
Yeah, go for
quick. Yeah, that's one.
One more tool. Okay, so one more tool is everyone, I believe, also should learn how to relax their brain and know how to turn off their thoughts. It's really hard to turn off your thoughts.
Yeah.
There's a practice, and you can just look this up on YouTube, called Yoga Nidra, Nidra, or sometimes spelled Nidre, where you just lie down and you listen to one of these scripts, and you do this while you're awake during the day. It takes about 10 minutes, and it teaches your system how to relax. People who do this consistently, maybe 1 to 4 times a week, you'll find you can fall asleep much easier, stay asleep much deeper.
Yeah.
Totally free, totally available. Safety margins are huge.
Check that out for sure.
What was that quote?
Sleep meditation.
I made a quote up before, and it was like, our brains are not inside of us, we're inside of our brains, because I think
you're inside your head all the time.
We're inside our head all the time in every aspect of life. So I really believe that whatever we can do to improve our brain, we should do. And what the things that you've been seeing on this podcast is great. This is 100% part 1 of maybe part 2 or part 3, whatever, because we could sit here all day and speak to you, mate. And I know you've got a shit ton of tips and educational stuff on your Instagram. What's your Instagram account?
Yeah, it's Huberman Lab, HUBERMANLAB. I teach a little neuroscience there, daily posts. I give some references to some tools and practices. Right. I try and make it accessible.
Yeah. So check that out. And like I said on the Instagram post the other day, if you want to get your brain better, which we all should, you need to check out your Instagram. And mate, thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm honored, and I look forward to more.
Let's do it.
Next episode's going to be a supplement special, because I could talk about this stuff all
day. This is Glenn's supplement cupboard there.
Yeah, that's pretty. We could talk about supplements. I've spent a lot of time in that space. Do you know about examine.com?
No.
So examine.com is a free website where you can put in any supplement, any compound, and it'll tell you it's got what's called the human effect matrix, and it'll put 3 arrows if it's a big effect, up or down. So it'll be like blood sugar, 3 arrows, it means it increases your blood sugar. Then it has a link to the study, and it tells you who it was done in. Was it like postmenopausal 90-year-old women, or was it 14-year-old hypogonadal kids, or was it like standard, healthy young males? Gives you all that.
Examine.com.
Examine.com.
Check that out.
Yeah, check that out too.
Everyone, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sure you did. And until next time, we'll see you later.